Hey all, we're gonna work on unwrapping the sword today, so let's get right into it. So the way that we do this, obviously, as we talked about yesterday, but we'll go ahead and just add an unwrap UVW onto it. We'll open up the editor, and I like to turn off the seams and the peel. I don't need to see those right now. I'm gonna grab everything inside. Make sure I don't want to be in the edge mode. I want to be in the. I am in the poly mode. Go to Tools, Mapping, and just Flat Mapping. I like to do this just to real quick get an idea of where everything is and how things work. Then what I do is I move it off the screen a little bit, and then I'll take these two biggies right here. I'm going to grab them this way, turn on the select element, grab this one and this one, just move them out of the way. I'm going to grab all these, we know that's the handle, and say Mapping, Tools, and Pack UVs, and say Fill Holes, Rotate Clusters, sure. Why not? That just gives me a bigger version of what I had before. And now they don't quite match. Now, remember what I told you though, is that Max in the Infinite Wisdom is not allowed you just to automatically have this on, unless there's some massive thing that I've missed. Anyway, so I go to Texture UVs, and then if I come back to this, I like looking at it with the box. And if you push F2, it'll get rid of that. So everything is unwrapped, but obviously it's really haphazard and it's kind of hard to control, especially if we're going to do our coloring book method. So let me go ahead and clean up some of this stuff real quick. Move those over there for right now. So you'll see that I have parts over here and I have parts over here. If I want to just start out, I could just grab and see what I got, what I grabbed. And what I might do is turn this up to 30, maybe even 45, because I know that the angle right here is about 45. So I'll click there. And I'm surprised that that's 45 too. Interesting. Okay, wow. Turn that back off. All right, so I'm going to grab that one and this one. This one. Goodness, 45 is too high. Let's go to 30. In this case, I'm going to turn on the F2. It's a lot easier to see in a lot of cases. So there, 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 there. And this is an option. If I want to do it so it transitions into that, I can, or I can make that part of the ball. I'm going to go ahead and leave that as part of the ball. So in this case, I'll have to turn off the 30 degrees and just do an Alt select on these bottom ones so I don't grab them by accident. You know what? No, I'm going to keep them. It kind of looks straight up and down. It's got some diagonals over here, but I can fix those. Though I don't want that one, so I'm going to deselect that. Now, what I have is all these pieces here. Well, technically enough, these are not a cylinder, right? So if I do my magic lightning bolt button, it gives me a pretty straight. Let's see how good or bad these are. If I push off the F2, they're a little stretched on the side. So what could I do? What could I do? Well, I could do the reshape elements and try and just straighten it, but that's not going to work. I can try and relax until flat. And that works pretty well. Instead of clicking on the relax and going through the menu, I can just push relax until flat, and those are pretty good. So I've got one set, that's pretty good. I can move that over. And then I could just do the same over here. Go back on F2. I'll turn this back on. Make a little bit bigger grabs here. Basically, I'm just grabbing the other side. And then I think I'm going to turn off the degree here and grab this one and this one. Yeah, that works. And then I'll do the same thing. So we like to this one. Oops, first I did it. I may have made Max angry. No, it didn't. Well, it's kind of did. See how it's not freaking out? Welcome to 3D Studio Max, or in any heavy 3D software program. There we go. It's back. It didn't do what we wanted it to do, so what I meant to do was pack. What I'm going to do is undo, and then I'm going to say Tools. Actually, I'm going to go over to Lightning Bolt it, and then I'm going to use that button again. So this one. Now I've got something closer to that, and if I wanted to, I could even overlap them, which we may do. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm going to kind of go around and do all that right here. I'm going to grab this one, like that. It's really funny that that's 30 degrees. So if you grab something like that, sometimes it's easier just to de-grab it by pushing, or deselect it by pushing 45 degrees and then selecting it. So I've got that one, and this one, again, I'm just going to be quick, fast, dirty, out of the way to get an idea of what I want. Obviously, there's some problems there. I can try and do this and see how that works out. It's not horrible right here. It's not horrible. It's not perfect, but it's definitely not horrible as it could be. So I'll come in here, turn that back down to 30. And when we get into texturing a little bit more, I can show you some tricks to get rid of that problem. Go back to 45, not 450. Oh, of course you did, 45. And then deselect with the Alt selection, Alt, and then turn that off. I guess I missed a few up here, which actually I didn't mean to grab those. Turn those off. Okay, again, lightning bolt. Move it out of the way. Do this real quick. All right, so we've got two of them that are pretty good. Make sure that one worked out. Yeah, that's pretty good. Again, back to the 30. We'll do 35 this time. See if that's any better. No, pretty much the same deal. That's fine. Well, I kept getting bigger and bigger every time I grabbed it. Let's try 45. Oops, let's try 15 or 30, I guess was the one that we tried. It was originally better. And then turn this to 45 and deselect this and that. All right. Lightning bolts, and we're going to go back to our oak. Move that out of the way. Grab this one with the 30. Like I said before, unwrapping is usually the least favorite thing an artist has to do. I can't say it's always, because I know some artists who don't mind doing it. Those are the exceptions. And I don't want that on. So this is the last sphere. So I grab that, and then as I've got it all, do lightning bolt, and then I do the this. Move it out of the way. Okay. So let's see. What I like to do sometimes is see what I've left, right? We already kind of knew what I had left, but this makes it easy just real quick to grab it. So let's go up here and do the handle. Let's do the same thing. Let's see, 45 on this one, probably too much, obviously. But 30 should be pretty good if I go like this. Let me see. And then turn off the back facing. Front Z. Like that. Yeah. All right. So we'll try. Now, lightning bolt's going to be weird. When I do that, it's going to do that thing right there. And what we're looking at is the top down, or actually the bottom down. So this is the outside edge here, and this is the inside edge, which is here. So if I try and do this, it's going to look funky no matter what. See how it's kind of going tiling? Now, this isn't the worst thing in the world. This isn't but it's really not a clean way of doing it. So what you might want to try and do in this case is double click on that edge right there. Even though I have this on, it's great that it does that. And just break it. And then we're going to come back to it, turn it back on, grab it by going to that mode, and see if it'll do this. It's probably going to explode, and then, yeah, it did something. But this may be the time when you want to grab Relax Tool and see if you can get it to flatten out a little bit more. And if we look at it, okay, so we could fight with this for a while, and maybe we'll come back and look at that. But I mean, it's not horrible, it's not great. But that's the thing about using Substance, which we'll talk about. There's not as much of the fight that we used to have with trying to make edges match up and getting seams cleaned up. Doesn't mean you shouldn't know how to do it, and we can talk about that. But all right, let's look at this one. Sometimes it's easier just to grab the parts like this and see what we get. Yeah, I'm gonna grab this one. Grab that. And here's a one that may seem weird to use. I'm gonna grab this and this in this case. I'm gonna turn off that. I'm gonna deselect those edges so I just have those. And it looks like it didn't grab everything. And it grabs some stuff I didn't want to grab. So with that turned off, I can deselect it. Pretty easy, just make sure you go like that. Grab that one back. Right, take this one off. So there's other things that we could talk about, like unwrapping half of the sword. So we may just end up doing that just for speed's sake. But just like symmetry, when we did symmetry before, if you unwrap half the sword, then you don't have to fight with the same unwrapping twice. And I'll show you. So I grab that, I look at it, and I say, well, how's that going to work? It's got that fat edge. And let's take a look what it does. It does that, right? And if we look at the unwrap on here, we'll see that it does that little weird stuff. But what we do is we push this straighten, which is a decent one for this case. It'll flatten it out, and I don't like that one, actually. I'm going to try this one. There we go. And that's a little closer. I mean, it's not straight anymore, but it's probably because it wasn't straight in the first place. So, and then we could go ahead and do that all the way through. But rather than do that, let's do this. I'm going to take this sword first, and then I'm going to convert it to an editable poly. Yes, I'm collapsing the UV unwrap on it because I do not like having things in my stack. I mean, maybe that's just the old me from working in Max way in the day. But if I come in here and I go D for I'm sorry, not. If I turn on my edge facing and I come in here and I grab the polys, I look down here and down the middle, make sure it's cutting right down the middle, make sure it got both sides right down the middle. Looks like we're good, so I delete. Oops, I missed half of this. Go back to the front, and let me show you what we have now. We have the same things we had before, but we just have one set. Okay, awesome. What can we do to make it even faster? Well, I want to look at this, and I notice that I did everything so it's cut in half again. I can even do it smaller, and I'm going to explain to you what happens when I take this and mirror it back. It enables the UV unwrap to be all the way across the whole thing. Let me show you. So I'm going to take this one off, okay, and then I'm going to come over to the polys again. We'll go to the front view, C or Z to grab it, and then we'll go to polygons, and just again we're grabbing right down the middle. This isn't the final way you're going to do it in most cases. In some cases you might, if you're working on a mobile game or something like that, you may not mind having over or mirrored textures. We used to do that all the time, but in this case I'm doing it for a different purpose. I'm doing it for expediency, so I'll delete that. Now what I have now, as you would expect, is this. Let me turn off the lines. So I have half, now I have a quarter of the blade, right? So I only have one of those because it's the only one showing and all that stuff. Well, here, let me show you how we're going to do this, and this will help you understand the modifier stack a little bit better too, hopefully. I'm going to throw that symmetry back on just like we did before, front, and then we flip it because we're on the x-axis. And then if we go to the left and we do it again, and we say symmetry, and then we say Y and flip it, now we have our whole sword back. Everything should be clean, everything should be exactly as it was. Okay, cool. So, except for our smoothing groups, and that's why I say you always do those last. But anyway, for the purpose of this class, I didn't do them last so I could show you over and over again. Here's what the stack does. And now I do have two things in the stack right here. These are probably, there are times when I do have a stack, but I just don't like the edit poly stack, edit poly stack, edit poly modify, edit poly modify. It just asks for trouble if you ask me. So I'd keep it like this, right? And then what do I do? And I go down to the original, like when we were modeling it, and if you turn it on, you can see the final, like we've done. But then I turn on the UV unwrap right there. What that does, and let me get rid of the seams again. What that does is this. Let me turn on the final and go into my editor and do that wonderful trick that Max wants us to do now. Okay, so when I don't have it on, I'm really only doing this half, but when you put it on, it's mirroring it across. That doesn't mean that I'm done, but it means that I only have to do half of it and then come back and adjust any of the stuff at the other sides. That's the whole purpose of doing this. Sometimes I do it with the symmetries on. Sometimes I just do the quarter knowing that I'm going to have that fixed when I get there. So I'm going to do it that way because that's the way it seems cleanest to me. So I'm going to come up to the symmetries and I'm going to delete them. Oh, not that way. I'm going to delete them. I'm going to delete them. So I'm only working on that quarter for my brain. So I'm going to come back in here to make sure the map scenes are turned off. All right. Now, much less work to do. Let's take a look at what we have here. I'll go to 3 mode and have here. And I swear I did one of those, but apparently I didn't. I did the other side. All right, so I'm going to grab this, do what I just did over again. I'm not even going to worry about that at this point. I'm going to grab it like that. I'm just going to click this time. The 45 is great, actually. 45 is not too bad either. Turn that on, click here. Turn that back off, or 15 I should say. Do this. Do my lightning bolts. Now, this one is curved because, well, actually, it's interesting that it's curved. Oh, yeah, and where's my checker pattern? Well, the thing is, we're just trying to get the parts. All I'm trying to do at this point is get the parts separated out in the fastest way I can. Then I can arrange them as I need to and make sure everything's perfect. But this is a pretty fast way of doing it, and that's the whole point of it. You know, it's saving our time doing this stuff is the whole key here. Turn this back on, back on, back on. That's why I use lightning bolts, and I like calling it lightning bolt because it reminds me of LARPs, a LARP video. Turn that on, grab this one, and make sure I don't grab that, or that, yeah. Turn off your 15, do that. Okay, do the same thing, lightning bolt, it's gonna be curved, and we'll just go flat for right now. Wow, you are a weirdo. Okay, so lightning bolt, I need to change my lightning bolt. By default, it tries to do it, and that angle, see how it's cut like that? I just need to change it to be on, I believe, the X-plane. That should be fine. And then if I do the lightning bolt, it'll be straight. That's probably what I should have done on this one too. So right now it's defined by this, and it's averaging it out because of the curve, and since it doesn't have a full circle. So in this case, I probably want to go in the Y and look at it that way, and then say lightning bolt. Okay, so now I have two of them that are overlapping. That's totally fine. We'll do this. Oops. And we'll do that. Oh, that one doesn't still want to work, so we'll do that one. And that one. If you really want to. I almost like them clean. So I'm going to leave them that way for now. It seems to be a little bit better when I get the final sides on there. Alright, so what do we have left? We have all this crap. All that crap. So, this crap, you can decide how you want to do it. You can do this. Do the same thing. Check your angle. It's probably going to be X because we're coming from the side on this one. It'll probably be smarter to go to X. So if we look at the plane that it makes, see the box, the yellow box right there? That's the direction it's going to do it. Say lightning bolts, and yes, it's big, but that's fine. Pull it over here. I actually could have done it this way. Here, let me do this. Let me show what else you can do. Since I'm using a plane, if I do this, grab this guy, all at once. I notice I have an ugly end gun right there I gotta fix. And I'll do this guy too. Then I can do them all at once, bonk, and they're just smaller, but they're there. Still, if I want to make them individually, cleaned up, I can do that and see if that works any better and see what that looks like. Come back to that when we get to the final pieces. All I'm trying to do at this point is get this easiest way to get this stuff unwrapped. And like, if I really wanted to, what I could do now is move this over here between these and move this one, because if you look at this, this is showing me these two edges right here are the ones that are connected to. I can move it over, grab this one and move it over, and then we can do some dancing with this in a little bit. All right, so let's look at this one. Turn on the 15. I don't want the 15. Turn off the 15. This one, since I don't have it back, I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to go to front, Z. I'm going to grab all of that. That one, I'm going to grab this one just because I didn't on the other side. I'd probably been better to grab it for this one, but I didn't. So I'm going to grab that one. All we're doing is really putting pieces together here that go in one direction. So obviously I don't want this in the X, I want this in the Y. So I'll come back to Y, because Y goes forward and backwards in max. So Y, and then I say lightning bolt, boink. It puts it over there. I look at it, and it's a grid. It's not perfect, but it's a grid. It's a good start. Now I just have this left. Now don't forget, I would have had to do this twice. I have to do it for everything. There's two things with this top piece up here. I could try and attach this all together, but it's gonna get funky because this is such a big area. So I'm just gonna do it like this and say lightning bolt again. Maybe try this and see what it does. Yeah, it's not horrible, so I'll do that one just to get it out of the way. Then I have these left, and what that is a couple of little strays that I missed, and I'll show you how to fix that, and that's a pretty cool thing. But there's this, and then instead of doing anything, I'll just go back to the standard, since it's one up and down, and I can go lightning bolt, bam, out of the way. And then I have these two left, so I gotta find those two. There's one there we saw, and one on the bottom. Okay, so what the cool thing about this is that if I take this poly right here, or if I look at this poly and I say, okay, this one's missing the piece, I can grab that sucker right there and click Control and just click on that one, and it'll see how it grabs all the way around. Now if I say lightning bolts, it's going to be weird because it's on the wrong axis again, but I change it to Y and I say lightning bolt. Now that's out of the way, that little weird fragment. There's another one. So again, I'll show you. I'm going to take this one and figure out where that is. That's this guy. And then you know what? Actually, I'm going to do the other guy, this one. This has too much stuff already going on with this, so trying to get it to flatten out is going to be more difficult with that on there. So, oh, you know what? Never mind. I like the other one better. This one for this, okay? And then I do make sure it's faced the right direction. Looks like it is. So I say lightning bolts, move it out of the way, and there's this one. That's just the spike, and it's really only 2 polygons. So let me see how it's drawn up here. It's not horrible, but the only reason I'm going to do the lightning bolt in this case, I'm just going to go facing lightning bolt, is only so it's bigger, really. Then what I do is we use that tool that we talked about in class, tools, pack UVs, and rotate fill holes, just to get it all set up. Oh, that's interesting. So what's going on there is the sword blade is getting in the way. So if we keep everything with that sword blade on, the biggest thing on the screen is going to be that sword blade. So if you have a few choices at this point, I'm going to grab everything separately and then say, tools, pack UVs, put them in there. And then I'm going to grab this sword blade and throw it in there just to see. And whether I like the packing or not, the whole point of this is, now look, what you're going to see and you'll understand is pixel density does matter, which means that this resolution matches. That means the pixels that are put onto this object, if I use one texture, are all going to be exactly the same. But you see how this is bigger? This means this has less pixel density. And that's okay in a lot of cases. And in some cases you may not want to. what we could do is throw a different texture just on the blade to give it a lot of detail. And we can see what happens there. So it's up to you how you think it needs to fit, but for now, I'm just gonna do, I can rearrange it now so I have everything the right size. I'm gonna leave the blade the wrong resolution. The other option is to cut the blade up and have it in pieces across here, which is fine too, especially now that we cleaned up our seams with the other tools we use. So maybe we'll just do that eventually, but we'll see with the sword how low the resolution is comparatively. So if I turn this on right here, I can just start grabbing pieces so it's element. And I'll rotate it with that tool. Move it up here. This one, I may want to see if I can flatten out, and then of course it does that. So let's see if we do it this way, what happens. And it looks weird. Okay. What it's telling me is that all this stuff is just too much for it. And that's totally fine. I could cut this in half too and make my life a little bit easier since it's a decent place to transition. Probably not the center of the gem, even with the UV unwrap, or even with substance, it might be a little bit more of a pain. So I may grab this, oops, turn off that part, grab this piece. Let me see. Okay, so where you're looking to put changes in textures by default is usually around a seam that's concave. You want it to be going inward because that's an easier one. If you have it going outward, that convex, meaning the out going bending over that instead of bending inward, it's easier to notice, and the seams can get jacked up, and there's other little things that can go wrong with it. So what I'm going to do is just take it from here and do a simple, hopefully lightning bolt simple. Take the same thing here. Actually, I guess I could do all these at the same time. I just want to remove the gem from the selection. Do lightning bolts. Grab this again and do lightning bolt. Okay. And now, if I take one of these and I do, like, say, this relax, it won't be too bad. I still won't like it, so I'll try this one. It's not bad. Oops, it looks like I missed some. This relax, yeah, it's not bad. So we'll just do that for this one too. I'm going to turn on my select element, do this one, pop, and this one, pop. Okay. So really what I have here is, this is the biggest thing now. The question is, does that need to be the most amount of geometry, or most amount of texture space? Because am I going to have so much detail inside of this shiny round part that it's going to make a difference? And that's what you have to decide, or is the sword more important, or whatever. So I'm going to stop it at this point, and come back on the next video, and we will talk about how we're going to break the sword up and how we're going to shrink this down a little bit, and then rearrange our environments here a little bit better, and clean up that mess. All right, I'll show you this real quick before we clean up this, before I click off. One of the cool things I like about unwrapping is I can grab those extra polys that I grabbed by accident, I left on there by accident, like that, collapse this down or convert it to an editable poly, come to my poly mode, because I was in the poly mode when I made the selections, grab it, and look it, they're selected for me. So I have a really easy way to clean up a mesh. I just grab what's wrong inside of the UV unwrap, collapse it down, delete what's wrong, or open it up, and it'll open up the selected, and then put the UV unwrap right back on it, and everything's still the same. Okay? All right, we'll be right back, and we'll go from there.